Hi folks, it's Dr. Muddassir here with my another episode of the Supply Chain Show. Today we have another episode with a very interesting person who is not a supply chain professional. Today we have Yasmin as a guest. She is an executive coach and a sales storytelling trainer. Hi Yasmin, so do you mind introducing yourself please?
Hi Dr. Khater. So my name is Yasmin and I help senior leaders become more effective at getting in more buy-in through using their stories to be able to do that. I've been training sales team and senior leaders for over 8 years. So thousands of people across the world on how to be able to use stories as a way to connect more and to become more relevant, to be able to sell their ideas and to stand out and to be more relevant.
No, perfect. Thanks for joining. I think the purpose of engaging with you is to have a perspective. You know, we are as a supply chain professional, our life, basically work life, never really begins or finishes without the engagement of the sales guys. So one of the challenges I see in my interaction, there is I don't want to say lack of supply chain knowledge, because that's not fair, because the salespeople are very smart people mostly, and you know they know business. But how we can basically create more awareness of our supply chain challenges with our sales community. So I think the question would be how sales team, or why it is important for the sales team to understand the supply chain better.
So we're seeing, especially now with COVID-19, a massive shift towards going through more of online means to sell your services. So therefore, supply chain has become more and more important because the way we have adjusted to consuming, how we buy, how we deal with life has completely changed, regardless of the industry. I was speaking to somebody who was in the oil and gas industry, and he's like saying, before you go to like clients, meeting them face to face, now everything's on the phone, right? So therefore, supply chain needs to also adjust because people's needs are still going up. I think because it's such a important to supply chain, it doesn't mean anymore that like the salespeople can go ahead and just ask supply chain to do something, but it needs to be a joint effort, because the supply chain can be also a unique advantage that the salespeople can use to distinguish themselves from other people in the market. So I feel like right now we're at a point where it's gone beyond silo departments to really becoming more collaborative, because that helps better the whole company as a whole, especially as we're going to go through more and more forced innovation by what's happening in the world.
No, absolutely valid point. But I think I would also like to flip the coin here, right? Because we as operational people, we are very action driven, right? You know, we are here to get things done. You know, we are executors. You know, that's what we are, and that's what we business expect from us, which is fine. But I think there is an opportunity for us is to get better in engaging our sales team a bit more, because they are, for us, is a voice of the customer, if you want to call it. And if you really look into the supply chain, and you know, they are my internal customers. Most of the time, I don't talk to the end customer directly, right? I talk to my sales guys. So we have to treat them like salespeople, and I totally genuinely believe that we have to treat our sales team like a customer. So how we can, what we have to do to engage with them better? Give some tips.
So I think by the virtue that we call it a sales department, we think like, oh yeah, they have to sell. But actually everybody who's in a career, in a job, in any kind of form is selling their ideas all the time. We are always selling our ideas. We're selling ideas in terms of where should we have lunch today, to in terms of what we should focus on for the quarter. So I think the perception of like people say like, oh, it's a sales team. Like actually, no, we're always selling. We're always selling in our jobs. Even you, for example, doing this channel, you're selling yourself as being a thought leader in this space, right? We're always going ahead and doing those things. So I think that the issue is that a lot of times the supply chain will speak in their lingo, and they speak in their department and in their structure. And the sales team will also speak in their department and their structure. And it's really important when we're telling any kind of message, any kind of communication, that we're speaking to the customer's anxiety. And if, for example, the sales teams are worried about hitting their quarterly targets, and we could talk about how this innovation can help reduce the time frame to make us more competitive, the sales team will be more interested in listening to it versus going too technical all over the place. A next level beyond that as well is that there's different sorts of communication styles depending on who you're speaking to. And sometimes what happens, if you're the kind of person who likes to have a lot of information, like you're a typical engineer, lots of information, you want to see everything to analyze those things, you'll be speaking to somebody who doesn't need to know that. They want to know the high level points. And if you're going too detailed, you bore the person. And when you bore the person, they zone out, you know, and now it's even worse. Like we're on Zoom and people are having calls on Zoom, on Blue Jeans, on WebEx, and people are zoning out because it's boring. And even though if what you're saying is really important, if the way you're saying it is not effective, then you've lost the person before you even started the whole conversation.
No, absolutely fine. I think great points. I think you mentioned this word, speak the same language, right? And I think the point you also made, which I have a chat with Radu in my previous channel where I got engaged with you, is keep things simple. You know, keep things high level for people to understand. And coming to my starting statement, which is a slightly challenging for us as a salespeople, as a supply chain professionals, is to speak the sales language, right? Or is to speak the keep things simple. Because for us, the way we have our brains, our mind, because, you know, I come from the Six Sigma background or lean background of, you know, facts matters, right? You know, what you say is what you get. So our brains are driven that, you know, as long as I've got my facts right, I'm all right. But sometimes it's not understanding for those guys. So but on the other hand, the sales team, or some of the people, not all of them, they play this customer card. Okay, customer is always right. Okay, and I'm the voice of the customer. Do what I say. But I think the real solution is somewhere in between. Yeah, customer is always right. But you need to understand, I've got a plant of 500 people and I've got a limited capacity. I cannot magically produce something, you know. So let's give a bit more theme about how we can speak the same language, as you said, and how we can make things simple for us to talk better.
So I love the fact that you brought up the data, right, and the facts. So like last week I was teaching a class around data storytelling. And the one thing people don't realize is that in the end of the day, it's called data storytelling because it's still led by a story, right? And if you look at 𝐥𝐤𝐬𝐷, which is a professor at Harvard, he came up with the notion that 95% of all buying decisions are triggered by emotions. But sometimes what happens is people will lead by the facts. And the facts are important. That's why it's only 95%. Because the 5% is when our logic justifies the story, justifies the emotion. So if you are leading with statistics or a number, or look at my X and Y axes, or look at my analysis, or whatever it is, you haven't gotten me emotionally engaged enough to care. And if I cannot care, then I cannot engage with you, I cannot help you. So I think what it comes down to, it's really oftentimes when I work with teams, communication issues. Because it's people who think like, oh yeah, it's fine. But as we get more senior in our careers, it's not about the skill set. It's also in terms of how do you go ahead and be persuasive and influential in getting someone to buy into your ideas. And if your ideas are still like super confusing, then you've lost the plot and somebody will pick something else. And if you look at why people don't buy, one of the number one reasons people don't buy is because they're confused. So even if a sales guy like would love what you're offering, if you've confused the person, they're like, oh, 10 things to do today. I can't understand, next thing on my agenda. And that's the thing that when looking to get more stakeholder buy-in is you have to realize if you do not get that, if you don't know how to share that message, you've lost the plot.
No, absolutely correct. I think this thought of communication, being on the same page, leads to the topic I love most. And I think what I love is I'm a trainer and a coach in sales and operations planning. You know, I go to the conferences, you know, I conduct some master classes, and sales and operations planning is exactly designed to do that, is to improve the communication, engage with the stakeholders, you know, identify the gaps and work as a team collaboratively to close those gaps to make decisions. So that exactly, that's the way the SNOP is designed. You know, just to say I have a course at SNOP, if somebody wants to have it, you can go to SCMDOJO and you can have it. So, but one of the challenges in my experience is that even though some people who understand SNOP get engaged, but one of the senior leaders, especially maybe the sales executive, they do not understand the sales and operation planning process, because in one of the most step, on the fifth step, is the executive review, right?
Yeah.
Salespeople are always busy. They need to be with the customer. Executives are super busy. They only have 1 hour in their month to give it to us, right? And it all comes down to what's in it for me. Basically, what's in it for them as the executives or the salespeople to give me this 1 hour of their life in a month, right? So tell me, you know, give us some tips on how to engage into SNOP process.
So the first thing is to avoid this mistake. if you are blaming your sales team for not listening, understanding you, that's the number one mistake. It's like, for example, a salesperson saying, the customer is so stupid, they don't buy from us, so they don't understand. It's the same thing, right? So we need to also make sure that we don't blame one another, because oftentimes it's the fact that we're not getting the point across. Now, yes, they have that 1 hour a month to be able to get the key points. But at the same time, it's like, how effective is that 1 hour? Is that something that's like to do this, checking off a list? Or are we actually saying something that's worthwhile continuing? Is it, for example, that we're saying something that actually makes sense for them to go ahead and do? And I sort of sometimes feel that a lot of times it's a blaming game instead of the fact that it's like, well, okay, maybe it's also the fact that us as leaders has to play the responsibility game in terms of, if it hasn't been moving forward, then what am I doing wrong? Because as the great Einstein says, if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, that is the definition of stupidity. So a lot of times what happens with teams is they'll do stuff over and over again, and then they'll blame one another, and then they'll be like all this politics for no reason, when in reality, it's an issue of how do we make sure that we're better understanding one another and being able to influence another in the direction that we should be moving towards.
No, perfect. I like this one. This is one of my favorite quotes of Einstein. Certainly agree. I mean, since I have your time, I would like to, if you to share, if you have any stories, with the team here, because you're executive coach. Any one of the interesting stories you have for us, to listen and learn.
There's so many,
Okay,
but the one that I find so fascinating. In one of my programs, one of the guys was saying, oh, this is amazing. Like, I completely understand. But if we're learning how to sell our ideas better, are stakeholders learning how not to buy our ideas? And I was just like so fascinated by that. It's because we live in a world where we all have problems and we want to have our problems solved. So if someone comes to a parent who has a crying baby and says, take this like lollipop, and the baby will stop crying, every parent in the world will take a freaking lollipop. Like, it's a stupid example, but it's the same thing. Like, we live in environments where, in a supply chain perspective, if you are able to help a salesperson solve a problem and make their job easier, they will definitely be buying into that. And the same thing with a salesperson, with a supply chain expert as well. So in the end of the day, it's really understanding that we are all selling ideas in different capacities, different stakeholders, but it's important to understand that. The second thing I see is people will blame their background. They'll say, oh, but I'm so technical, I'm really bad at this skill. It's like, okay, you may not be as great as somebody else, which is fine, but you can get better at it. Because if you're looking to improve and progress your career, it's a skill that you have to do. And I hear that in different forms. I hear technically, I also hear that culturally. Like, I was doing a program last year with the Ministry of Innovation of Estonia, and they were saying, oh, but you don't understand, Yasmin, Estonians are not that verbal. And then they blame the country card. It's like, oh, we can't help it, we don't like doing that. It's a very different cultural thing. And so I typically find that most people will blame that they are not good at it. It's not natural, that they're very technical, when in reality, those are just excuses of the fact that, like, you haven't learned it. And just like an engineer took 5 years to study engineering, you have to spend time to learn about how to communicate, how to get more stakeholder buy-in. Because if you learn how to do engineering with that 5 years, imagine what you can do by spending some time, maybe even 10, 15 minutes a day, learning on how to get more stakeholder buy-in. It's huge impact for not only your business, but also your career.
No, perfect. Really good takeaways, right? I think the summary for discussion is for us is to get better in selling our ideas, right? So if we know, for example, the S&OP process is better for our suppliers, our customers, our business, to achieve our demand, our supply, productivity, we just need to get better. And the second one is, okay, so if your technical knowledge or your specific niche expertise is not an excuse for you not to learn new things, right? Because I think the communication is important, learn new things. I mean, fantastic conversation, right? So, and that's it, really. And thanks for your time, right? Much appreciate that. And hopefully we will see you again some other day.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Cheers.
Okay.
Good day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
So if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments below.